How's it, guys? This is Davey FC and welcome back to the Euro 2020 fantasy video. Now in this video, I'm going to be taking you guys through the chip drafts, namely the limitless draft and then a wildcard draft. So you're basically going to cover all the scenarios for you guys if you're going to be using a chip in game week 3 of the Euro 2020 fantasy game. We're going to start off with some talking points about which chip should you use, if any. We're then going to move on to the fixtures, which are the bread and butter of any draft, before finally revealing a wildcard and a limitless draft. So if you guys are interested in that, sit back, relax, and let's get straight into it. So going over the chip strategy, and the first thing I wanted to say is that if you guys do have the limitless chip, I would 100% use it in game week 3. So please don't waste that limitless chip. I think the highest potential for that chip is going to be in the group stages, and that could also translate to the wild card as well. So if you guys do want to use the wild card, I'm going to kind of give you the pros and cons here of why you should use it. So the pros of using it in the group stage is that statistically and on paper, the worst teams play the better teams. So in the knockout stages, the round of 16, the quarterfinals, the semis, usually it's going to be those stronger teams that get through the knockout stages. So in this, we're going to have the teams like a North Macedonia, a Slovakia, those sort of teams that you guys can really target and get hopefully more points than you would have in the knockout stages. So that's why using a chip in the group stages is quite popular. You would have seen a lot of people use the limitless in game week 2 and the wild card in game week 3 or vice versa, and I can perfectly understand that. The only thing about my strategy that I'm kind of wondering about is using that wild card in the quarterfinals, or at least before the quarterfinals. So if you guys do know, if you've been reading the rules, you do get a wild card for free before the round of 16. So going into that round of 16, you can make a completely new, fresh squad. But my kind of thinking is that it's quite hard to predict who's going to go through. And that's why I wanted to use my wildcard in the quarterfinals. But now doing a revision on that thinking, I kind of thought to myself, what are the teams that I'm going to be targeting in the round of 16? It's going to be the teams that have easier fixtures. And although we can have upsets, I would rather go for an easier fixture than maybe go for a France, Portugal, Germany, those sort of sides that I really do think will qualify for the quarters in the first place, and maybe target some teams that have an easy fixture. So let's just say North Macedonia managed to magically make it through to knockout stages. I would then triple up on that opponent because I know that that game is going to be quite a high scoring one. So I'm going to do a similar thing here, just with a little bit of a better rated side than North Macedonia. Apologies again to those North Macedonia fans. I don't mean to kind of tune your team too much. I'm just using them as an example. I could use it with any of the teams that are kind of with no wins at the moment, but that's just kind of the one that's on my mind. So yes, North Macedonia lives in my head rent-free right now. But you can kind of understand what I'm saying is that in the first place, I would be targeting those round of 16 easier games anyway. So those teams usually will qualify for the quarterfinals. So why am I using the wild card then in the quarterfinals? But it's just kind of a safe strategy I've thought about, because then if there are upsets in the round of 16, we can then kind of use that to our advantage and get those teams that maybe were knocked out. But then in the first place, if it is an upset, that means that that team probably will get knocked out in the quarterfinals anyway. So I don't really have to worry about bringing in any of those kind of upset players. So it's a kind of a tough thing right now, but I think I'm slightly leaning towards using the wild card this game week to kind of take advantage of those poor fixtures or those better fixtures that the group stage does have in store. But now let's go on and talk about the main con of using the wild card / the limitless in game week 3, and that is rotation. So yes, rotation is in store for us in game week 3. I think there's almost going to be mass rotation, especially in those better / best teams in the Euros right now. The reason for that is that the better sides usually have 6 points going to game week 3 because they've won the first 2 group stage games. So then they would have basically qualified for the knockout stages. So then they can kind of rotate their players. And you must remember, the thing about the Euro 2020 is that the fixtures are highly condensed. The time between the games is quite short, so you don't want to kind of burn out your squad or your best starting 11 going into those knockout stages. So a team like an England, if they beat Scotland tonight, which I'm expecting them to, a player like a Harry Kane, although he's super competitive, wants to play every fixture, I can perfectly understand him if maybe he's benched, maybe a Lukaku's benched, maybe a Ronaldo if they qualify. So just things like these, the top players, the big hitters, I'm expecting a lot of them to be rotated. So now with the wild card and the limitless, you almost have to predict who's going to start, and that's mighty tough. I know that we do have kind of the deadlines where we get the first match of the match day's fixtures, but it doesn't really help if in match day 2 suddenly you see one of your players is benched and you only have 3 bench options. It is a savior on a limitless because your bench is going to be absolutely stacked, but I don't think it's going to be 1 or 2 players that you have to take a risk on. I think it's going to be the majority of the big hitters, so I would recommend kind of predicting some rotation, and if news does come out, I will update you guys in the deadline stream because sometimes we do get some news here. We saw today that the England news comes out about 1 or 2 days earlier, so it doesn't really help us that much, but maybe if it comes out about 3-4 days earlier that Calvert-Lewin will start instead of Harry Kane, that could be highly useful information that we could gain. So I will keep you guys updated if qualified news does come about, but please just stay tuned to this rotation and expect it if you are using the limitless or the wildcard. And that's just kind of the caveat about using a chip in game week 3, is that it's going to be quite hard to predict a starting 11 that is super stacked, that's going to score a lot of points, but that's also going to start. But now going on to the fixtures, which as I mentioned in the introduction are the bread and butter of any draft, because first what I like to do is highlight fixtures that I think players or teams can do well and then get those players from those respective nations straight into my lineup, and if it's a really good fixture, even look at a double up or a triple up. So starting off, I'm going to be going through each match day, and that's kind of the different colors. So red refers to match day 1 and so on and so forth. So the first match day of game week 3 sees 2 fixtures. The first one is Switzerland versus Turkey, and then the second one is going to be Italy versus Wales. So the reason I haven't highlighted Italy versus Wales, although Italy have looked so strong, I'm expecting some heavy rotation there, and Wales, to be honest, don't look that shabby. And the thing about Wales is that they're going to have to get some results here if they're going to want to kind of secure that high placement. I think that they should go through kind of mathematically right now, but I'm pretty sure they want to wrap it up and make sure of it going into that knockout stage. So Switzerland, Turkey, I'm expecting Switzerland to do quite well here. I don't really get the whole narrative. I was one of those people that said before the tournament that Turkey were looking like a strong side, but after seeing their first fixture against Italy, where they basically just parked the bus the entire game, I wasn't really too fond of them. And then we saw against Wales them losing. So I think that kind of qualifies Turkey to be a team to target. So Switzerland, that's going to be kind of the fixture I would target if you're looking at match day 1. And I think an option like a Shaqiri, the forward line of Switzerland, are going to be quite good. Rodriguez, if I do recall, he's on penalty, so that could be quite a nice thing to have from a defender. But the thing about Switzerland is that they have to win this fixture as well if they want to qualify for those knockout stages, because the third team in some groups will also qualify. So going on to match day 2, the fixtures here are absolutely sensational. We've got Netherlands versus North Macedonia and Belgium versus Finland. So great fixtures on paper here. I'm pretty sure a lot of us will go for a triple up on Belgium assets, a triple up on Netherlands assets. It's just going to be quite hard to predict who starts from these respective teams, but great fixtures here. Arguably the best fixtures of match day 3 are happening on match day 2, which is actually quite nice for us because we can have those players in our starting lineup. If magically they don't end up performing, we can simply just sub them out, and there's not too much risk there, even though they have a great fixture, to be honest. I'm thinking of captaincy as well, because match day 2 is kind of a nice sweet spot there for captaincy. Match day 1's obviously the perfect one for a player to return, but match day 2, if your captain kind of returns, gets you about 8-9 points, you're a lot more comfortable than if he gets that on match day 1, because I think it puts in perspective what the player can return in that respective game week. Going on to match day 3, we have Croatia versus Scotland and England versus Czech Republic. If memory serves me right, these are the only 2 fixtures happening on match day 3, so I've kind of highlighted all of them. I kind of jippoed the best fixtures here, but I still think these are great fixtures for Croatia and England. By after tonight's fixtures, we should kind of get an indication of where Croatia, England, Scotland and Czech Republic are, and this should give us a good indication of how they're going to set up in game week 3. So Croatia, England, I'm expecting both of them to be first and second respectively, but then these 2 fixtures are going to be great for them. So maybe if Scotland, Czech Republic don't have many points, we could maybe see England and Croatia rotating. But the thing about the Croatia squad is I think already they're looking a little bit suspect. So I'm pretty sure against Scotland they'll play their strongest 11, and they are kind of competing with the Czech Republic here. Obviously with that game happening shortly, we're going to give a good indication of where these kind of teams are, but I would heavily favor England here and Croatia to win their respective match day 3 fixtures. So the final final match day of the game week has the plum fixture for me, and that's going to be Germany versus Hungary. So we also have Spain versus Slovakia, which will be interesting because Spain drew that first game of their kind of group stages, so they're going to want to put out a strong 11 here against Slovakia. But then we have Germany against Hungary, and the reason I'm saying this is a great fixture to target is that Hungary are not the best team in the world, and also Germany have to win this game. After losing to France in that first game of the group stage, and we don't really know what's going to happen tomorrow against Portugal, so this is a must-win game for Germany, and I'm expecting them to put on quite a show here and score a couple goals. So I think Germany is the team I would look to have a triple up on, but then it's closely followed by Netherlands against North Macedonia, and then Belgium versus Finland. You got to kind of just target the fixtures where the team has to win, and that's why I think Germany just tops it for me, because we know their big hitters are going to play, because they're firstly going to want to win the fixture, and then secondly they're going to want to get that goal difference, which could be quite important in that group of death. So now moving on to the first draft of the video, and that's going to be the limitless draft. Firstly, it's so much easier to create than a wildcard draft, and secondly, it's just a bit more exciting, so I wanted to cover it first. So going over a quick overview of this team, the first thing I want to say is that I did not sort this team according to playing time, so just please remember that I didn't sort this according to dates. Obviously, if you do go for this lineup, what you should do on your team selection is go and sort by date instead of fixture, and then that gives you a good indication of who starts match day 1 through to match day 4. So please just do that. I just think that this starting 11 is kind of the one that I'm predicting to score the most points. However, the bench players are going to be super vital, and they could also outscore the players that I have in my starting 11. So the first thing I want to talk about is Italy. So I've gone for a triple up here with Donnarumma, I've got Spinazzola, and I also have Chiesa. So the reason I have Chiesa here is because I think that he will start against Wales, just because there will be some rotation there. But the reason I've gone for a triple up on Italy is that we will be getting that lineup before the deadline. So as you guys know, Italy are going to play the first game of match day 1, so we always kind of get that lineup before the deadline of the transfers, which is super insightful, and that's going to allow us to get basically 3 confirmed starters going into game week 3. So I think Donnarumma, Spinazzola, Chiesa all have a really good chance of starting, and that's why I wanted to give you guys a good indication of who I expect to start here. And I think that Italy will do quite a good job against Wales, because I think Wales should qualify anyway for the knockout stage, so they're not going to be too worried about their placement, whereas Italy are going to kind of want to continue on this good form going into those knockout stages, so they can go as far as possible and also keep up this little bit of a record that they currently have. I think it's 9 games in a row that they haven't conceded, and it's quite a few games that they're actually undefeated. So I think they're going to want to continue this kind of good run of form. So I think a triple up on Italy is a sensible and quite a good option if you're going to be going on the limitless and also the wild card. The rest of the team kind of picks itself here, talking about the triple ups and the double ups. Firstly, Gnabry, Werner, and Havertz. So Werner can easily become Thomas Muller, but I just think after being benched against France, that Werner will get this easier fixture in inverted commas. I just monitor the game tomorrow against Portugal, because maybe Werner starts and does well, then he'll be a shoo-in to actually start against Hungary. But I think a triple up going for that attack of Germany is going to be where the sweet spot is, because the defenders, although we've seen Dumfries absolutely score a banger in game week 2, I think that kind of the attack is where it's going to be at against Hungary. So that's why I've gone for a triple up on the German attack with Gnabry, Havertz, and Werner, who all have a good chance of starting. The next double up is going to be Eden Hazard and Kevin De Bruyne, and the reason for this is that both these players came off against Denmark to kind of secure that victory, and I think that Martinez is going to want De Bruyne and Hazard to get a couple of minutes under their belt going into that knockout stage games, where they should be expected to probably play a full 90 in the round of 16, quarterfinals, semis, and finals if Belgium do progress that far. But I think with De Bruyne, Hazard, we saw kind of their class, their quality against Denmark in those last stages of the game, and I think I'm expecting a similar result for them against Finland. And unfortunately, just Finland haven't been playing that well in Euro 2020, which is a little bit expected considering they were quite lowly rated on the kind of UEFA rankings. But I'm expecting Belgium to do a job here, and that's why I think Hazard and De Bruyne are good shouts. And I haven't gone for Lukaku just because I think that he might be rotated, and I would rather go for some more secure strikers up front. Going into the rest of the defense, we've got Rodriguez here for Switzerland against Turkey. As I mentioned, I think that Rodriguez is on penalties, so as a defender, that just gives him a little bit of an extra extra edge there, and I do think he also is a fullback. So that's an attacking threat and also a defensive threat, and I think that Switzerland have to win this fixture if they want to progress. So against a Turkey side that I haven't really impressed that much, I do think Switzerland will do the job. On the bench there, the rest of the defense is going to be Dumfries and then Vindal. So the reason I've gone for Vindal is that I've seen a lot of people saying that Dumfries might be rotated, but if you have watched the Netherlands fixtures, what happens is Van Arnold gets subbed about that 60-minute mark, and then Vindal comes on to replace him. So I think that Dumfries will start on one side, Vindal will start on the other side, and I think that that will be the Netherlands lineup going against North Macedonia. So I think Vindal's a good option because I think he's basically guaranteed to start, whereas Dumfries is a little bit more risky. But the thing about Dumfries, we saw this past game week in game week 2, if he starts, he absolutely bangs it. So please, I think it's worth the risk going for Dumfries against the North Macedonia side, where I think it's a guaranteed clean sheet, unfortunately. So I think that Dumfries, Vindal, they will be my two Netherlands defenders. Going on to the rest of the striking department, I've gone for Memphis Depay, Harry Kane, and Timo Werner. Already spoke about Timo Werner, so I'll talk about Memphis Depay. He's the one that I'm a little bit worried about, but I definitely wanted some coverage in that Netherlands attack. I don't know if Gini Wijnaldum will play, probably will be a safer option, but I just think up front, Memphis Depay has looked good, has got some returns, and I think that if he's going to want to chase this kind of golden boot in the Euros, they definitely will start him. But Netherlands also have some quality, a kind of backup strikers. Luke de Jong we'll talk about shortly. I mean, he could also feature. We have Marlon who could also play. So just keep an eye on that. But if Memphis Depay does start, he will be a shoo-in for one of my captains going into game week 3. Harry Kane is a similar situation here. I just wanted to kind of show you if they are guaranteed to start, I would 100% go with these options. And I think that Harry Kane's one of those competitive figures that wants to start every single fixture. And you know that Harry Kane wants to get that golden boot for the Euro 2020s. So I am expecting him to maybe start, maybe get subbed about that 60-70 minute mark, but that could be enough to get some returns against the Czech Republic. The final player in the squad, along with Jordi Alba, didn't talk about Jordi Alba there, against the Slovakia side that I think that Spain could keep a clean sheet and also get some attacking returns. I think that Jordi Alba is a good option for you guys to look at. And the final player is going to be Courtois against Finland. If Donnarumma doesn't keep a clean sheet, we can easily sub on Courtois, and I reckon that that's also a guaranteed clean sheet almost for a Belgium side against Finland. But as I always kind of say with the Limitless, when you remove the constraint of the budget, you get infinite solutions here. So please, if you guys have a better Limitless side in your opinion, post it down in the comments below and let's get some dialogue going, some conversation, some debate about which players you think are guaranteed to start and which players you think could potentially be benched. So now moving on to the second chip draft of the video, it's going to be the wildcard draft. And the wildcard is a little bit more modest than the Limitless. Unfortunately, you do have that budget restriction, and that's why I had to downgrade some options. So why I wanted to talk about the Limitless first and then the wildcard is I think that you guys should build a Limitless draft and then simply downgrade those options. You can kind of do that in 2 steps. The first option is simply downgrading a more expensive team to a less expensive team that still has a great fixture. Or the second option is simply just to downgrade them to a cheaper player still in that respective nation. So the perfect example here is taking Jordi Alba down to Pau Torres, because they obviously are on the same team. If they do hopefully both start, that could be great, but they still do have the same great fixture. So that's an example there to kind of get you in that budget constraint of the wildcard. Starting off, I've still gone with the triple up in that Italian lineup, and that's just simply because we get the lineup before the deadline. So a highly valuable piece of information there for your own drafts. And on the chip, you kind of want to get at least 3 guaranteed players. So Italy provide us that option, and they do also face Wales. So Wales have played well in the Euros, but I think that Italy will be too strong for them. So Donnarumma, Spinazzola, and Chiesa are still in my starting 11. We then have had some rotation here. Mentioned Jordi Alba, downgraded him to Pau Torres. Rodriguez still remains here because I think that that penalty threat just offers a little bit more going forward. I've downgraded Eden Hazard to Gini Wijnaldum just because I think that Gini is one of those guaranteed Dutch players to start. And then I've downgraded Dumfries to Boyata. So an interesting piece of news actually came out on Twitter today, and it said that Thomas Vermaelen will be starting instead of Denayer. I actually think that Boyata could maybe feature in that, so maybe keep your eyes on that Belgium news. But if Boyata doesn't start, you can simply just sub him out and bring in another option that you expect to start. I don't really know how much Vermaelen is, so maybe just check that. If he is 4.5, simply just put him back in the squad instead of Boyata. But unfortunately, we had to downgrade Dumfries just because there is a little bit of an expectation that he might be benched, and I don't really want that. that on a wildcard, I want to get that budget restriction as low as possible. So I want to get players that are guaranteed to start and are also quite cheap. Still stuck with Kevin De Bruyne and Gnabry because I think those are no-brainers in my opinion. If they're going to be starting their respective fixtures, you definitely want these two players in your squad. I've still gone with a similar lineup, but now I've gone for some downgrades. So Timo Werner still remains in the squad because I think that there's a good chance that he does actually play. But then I've gone for some downgrades of the respective teams. Gone for Dominic Calvert-Lewin instead of Harry Kane, and then also gone for Luke de Jong instead of going for Memphis Depay. So these two players might not even start, but I think on that wild card, you need to get some insight there, need to make some predictions. So I've made some extreme predictions here. I've gone for Calvert-Lewin, gone for Luke de Jong, just because if those big hitters are benched, these two players have a good chance of starting. I mean, Rashford could also start up front, but I think that they'll want to give Dom a fixture in the Euro 2020s. And if they have wrapped up qualification, Czech Republic could be a game that Southgate does rotate. So these are the teams that I've gone for, and I still think that you guys should go for them, maybe just cheaper options. On the bench, a new addition is Ferran Torres against Slovakia. So just had to include him here, downgraded Havertz, just because I think that Spain will go full strength, and I think that Ferran Torres is definitely one of those players that will feature in that lineup. The next player, instead of Courtois, I've gone for Hiradecky, just because he's really cheap against Belgium. I'm not expecting too much there, just hoping that Donnarumma managed to get a clean sheet, because Hiradecky won't get a clean sheet in my opinion against a really strong Belgium side. But this is the wildcard draft. As with the limitless draft, drop your guys' current wildcard draft in the comments down below, and we can get some dialogue going and give me players that you expect to start and players that you think are going to be benched. But this is basically a wrap of the video, guys. Hopefully you did enjoy it. Please don't forget to like it if you did, and subscribe if you're new and have not subscribed yet. If you are watching this as it goes live, enjoy the game tonight between England and Scotland, as I'm sure most of you will be supporting England. Then we have some great fixtures coming up tomorrow, especially that Germany versus Portugal game, where both my eyes will be heavily glued to the television screen. I'll be creating my team selection coming up tomorrow, where I decide if I'm going to be using the wild card or if I won't, and you'll be getting the latest draft before the deadline with Davey livestream for that Euro 2020 Game Week 3 last fixtures of the group stage, which will happen about an hour before the deadline on Sunday afternoon. I'm going to be signing off. It's been Davey FPL, and I'm out. Cheers, bye.